which Dale takes us to task for really not understanding the underlying geopolitics. We actually did not take it upon ourselves to do a geopolitical analysis because we thought the other papers were sort of what was going to lead. So our you might say, burden was to set a theoretical agenda. And along those lines, what we basically argue is that, in fact, the world, that interdependence is becoming more complex, and we need analytical frameworks that better account for that, right? So setting that aside for a second, it's really interesting. I want to just respond to Dale's geopolitical argument, all right? And I want to do it not to answer him, but to lay out issues that I hope we can have further discussion about, all right? So just 2 points. Dale sort of basically, the story that Dale tells, as I understand it, Dale, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that basically we are going to remain in a bipolar structure. It's a structure where China is rising. Maybe it won't even be bipolar, maybe it'll be unipolar as China just establishes sort of the supremacy. We don't know, right? So the position that we're taking, I mean, the position that we didn't take but is implicit in the paper, is actually we think it's going to be, if a multipolar, or if not multipolar, a much more decentralized structure than what you had during the Cold War. Right? There are going to be much more linkages, horizontal linkages, than what you had in the Cold War, where you had the United States and Europe at the center and the Soviet Union at the center, and countries were locked in on them, and there was very little horizontal linkage. Okay, so that's that's the first issue that I think we should discuss. Second issue is, it's actually geopolitics versus political economy, right? What's driving this here? Mm-hmm. For Dale, it's clearly geopolitics. It's Correct. China's rise, and that's Dale is taking a realist view, sort of security predominates, right? We're saying that actually, and I think Dale would agree with this, according to his reading, he agrees with us, that if you look at it from a political economy perspective, in fact, the political economy is taking a very different structure. And so there is a real issue of, is it geopolitics that's driving everything? Or does political economy and the forms that it take have a different, somewhat autonomous sort of framework? Finally, I want to talk a second about the domestic politics issue, because Dale does include domestic politics. All we're saying is that domestic politics is likely, put it this way, as countries become more interdependent, groups affected by, there are more groups that are going to be affected by that interdependence, right? And we think that makes the process of understanding strategic interests much more contingent, right? Because we can see groups like the China lobby of American corporations in the United States, or like the India lobby, affecting policy in some ways. But we can also see a growing share of people reacting against. There's in China also a nationalist lobby as well. So our argument is actually that it's much more contingent, and therefore we need to have much more sort of fine-grained analysis to understand the domestic dynamics. But nonetheless, in any case, the domestic dynamics are going to be more important as the world becomes more globally interdependent.
Well, we're already 5 minutes over, and I think I'm going to stop it here because I think we just really framed the issues beautifully. I think the comments in your rejoinder really sets up an extraordinarily good framework for much discussion as the day progresses. So we're already a little late, so let's take a break and reconvene in no more than 10 minutes. Thank you.